Why are you exhausted, even when nothing is technically wrong? Why do you feel tense, even when things are going well? Why does your mind keep running scenarios, preparing for problems that haven't even happened? Pause for a moment. What if the real reason you're stressed isn't your responsibilities, isn't your environment, isn't even other people? What if it's control? We rarely admit it. Control sounds responsible. Control sounds disciplined. Control sounds like strength. But look deeper. How often are you trying to control how someone responds to you? How often are you trying to control how fast something happens? How often are you trying to control how you are perceived, understood, or accepted? Even in silence, the mind is adjusting, predicting, rehearsing, and it is exhausting. Because the truth is this: the need to control is a disguised form of fear. Fear of loss, fear of uncertainty, fear of rejection, fear of being unprepared, fear of not being enough if things don't go as planned. Control gives the illusion of safety. It tells you, if I manage every detail, nothing can hurt me. But life does not bend to tight fists. And the tighter you grip, the more tension you create within yourself. You begin to monitor everything. You analyze every word. You replay conversations. You plan outcomes. You try to secure guarantees in a world that offers none. And slowly, without realizing it, you become mentally overworked, spiritually disconnected, emotionally rigid. Not because life is attacking you, but because you are trying to dominate what was never meant to be dominated. Here is the esoteric truth most people never consider. Real power does not come from controlling life. It comes from mastering yourself, mastering your reactions, mastering your emotions, mastering your response to uncertainty. Control is external. Mastery is internal. Control says, I must manage everything. Mastery says, I will manage myself. And there is a profound difference. One creates tension. The other creates stability. One depends on circumstances behaving. The other remains steady regardless of circumstances. Tonight, we are going to uncover something deeper than surface-level stress advice. We are going to explore the spiritual mechanics behind control. Why it feels powerful, but drains you. Why it promises security, but creates anxiety. And why the moment you stop trying to control everything is the moment real power begins. Stay with me, because what you're about to understand may completely change the way you move through life. To understand control, we have to understand the ego. Not ego in the sense of arrogance, but ego as the part of you that is constantly scanning for safety. The ego's primary function is protection. It wants to prevent embarrassment, prevent rejection, prevent failure, prevent loss. And because life is unpredictable, the ego develops a strategy: control. Control is the ego's attempt to guarantee safety in a world that offers no guarantees. It whispers, if I plan enough, nothing will surprise me. If I manage every detail, nothing will go wrong. If I anticipate every outcome, I won't get hurt. So what do? We try to control outcomes. We obsess over results. We replay decisions. We try to predict how everything will unfold before it unfolds. If something feels uncertain, we tighten up. Then we try to control people's opinions. We adjust our words carefully. We filter our personality. We monitor how we're perceived. We want to make sure no one misunderstands us, no one judges us, no one rejects us. Then we try to control timing. We grow impatient when things don't move according to our internal schedule. We say, this should have happened by now. I should be further ahead. They should respond faster. This opportunity should arrive sooner. And when timing doesn't cooperate, tension increases. Then we try to control how we are perceived. We manage our image. We curate our persona. We worry about reputation. We overthink how we came across in conversations. All of this feels responsible, but underneath it is something deeper. Control is rooted in uncertainty and tolerance. We are uncomfortable not knowing. We are uncomfortable not being sure. We are uncomfortable not being able to predict. And instead of learning to coexist with uncertainty, we fight it. Here is the truth most people resist. When you try to control everything, you are declaring war against uncertainty. But uncertainty is woven into the fabric of existence. It is not a flaw in life. It is life. You cannot eliminate uncertainty. You can only increase your tolerance for it. And when you refuse to tolerate uncertainty, you create internal friction. You exhaust yourself trying to predict what cannot be predicted. You strain yourself trying to secure what cannot be secured. You become hyper-vigilant, always preparing, always adjusting, always anticipating. And slowly, you mistake anxiety for responsibility. But anxiety is not responsibility. It is fear wearing a productivity mask. The ego believes that if it stops controlling, everything will collapse. But what if the collapse you fear is only the collapse of illusion? Because the deeper truth is this: security does not come from controlling outcomes. It comes from becoming resilient enough to face them. And that shift changes everything. Now let's go deeper, beyond psychology, beyond behavior, into the esoteric understanding of control. From a spiritual perspective, the universe does not operate through force. It operates through flow. Look at nature. Rivers do not force their way forward. They move around obstacles. Wind does not argue with mountains. It adjusts and continues. Seasons do not rush. They unfold in sequence. There is rhythm. There is timing. There is movement without strain. But when the ego tries to control everything, it introduces force into a system built on flow. And this is where misalignment begins. Energy constricts when forced. Think about your own body. The moment you become anxious, your chest tightens, your shoulders tense, your breath shortens. Force always contracts. Flow expands. When you try to force outcomes, whether in relationships, career, timing, or recognition, you send a signal of tension, and tension distorts clarity. Then resistance begins. Resistance creates friction. Friction drains energy. You feel like you're pushing against something invisible, like you're trying harder but getting less movement. Because resistance is not strength. It is misdirected effort. And then comes attachment. Attachment creates suffering, not desire. Desire is natural, but attachment. Attachment says, I must have this. It must happen this way. It must happen now. It must look like this. Attachment narrows possibility. It limits imagination. It blinds you to alternative paths. Here is the metaphor that explains it perfectly. Trying to control life is like gripping water in your fist. The tighter you squeeze, the more it slips away. But if you open your hand, the water can rest there. Not because you forced it, but because you allowed it. Control is tightening your grip on reality. Alignment is opening your hand. When you try to dominate life, you disconnect from its rhythm. When you try to micromanage outcomes, you lose sensitivity to guidance. When you try to force alignment, you move further away from it. And this is the key truth. Control blocks alignment. Alignment requires receptivity. Alignment requires awareness. Alignment requires flexibility. It requires you to act, yes, but without gripping the outcome so tightly that you suffocate it. The universe responds to clarity. It responds to intention, but it resists desperation. Because desperation carries the energy of lack, and lack distorts perception. When you release force, you regain flow. When you release attachment, you regain peace. When you release resistance, you regain clarity. And from that clarity, movement becomes natural again. Not chaotic, not forced, not frantic, but aligned. Control feels powerful. Let's be honest about that. When you are organizing everything, when you are directing conversations, when you are planning every detail, when you are anticipating every possible scenario, it gives you a sense of authority, a sense of dominance, a sense of superiority over uncertainty. But look closer. That power is fragile, because the moment something unexpected happens, the moment someone responds differently than you planned, The moment timing shifts, that power collapses. And when it collapses, anxiety rushes in. That's how you know it was never true power. It was conditional control. Think about micromanaging relationships, constantly checking tone, overanalyzing messages, trying to influence how someone feels about you, trying to guide their emotions in a direction that feels safe for you. It may feel like you're protecting the connection, but in reality, you are trying to dominate something that requires freedom to thrive. Control suffocates intimacy. It replaces trust with tension. Now think about obsessively planning every outcome. Yes, planning is wise, but obsession is fear. When you rehearse conversations in your head 10 different ways, when you create backup plans for backup plans, when you try to script how life should unfold, you are not strengthening yourself. You are trying to eliminate unpredictability. But unpredictability is part of existence. And then there is overthinking every decision, analyzing every possible consequence, fearing regret before it even exists, second-guessing your intuition because you want absolute certainty. But certainty is an illusion, and chasing it endlessly keeps you mentally trapped. Here is the deeper revelation. True power is not dominance over external events. True power is emotional regulation within them. It is the ability to remain steady when plans shift. It is the ability to stay grounded when someone disappoints you. It is the ability to think clearly when circumstances surprise you. That kind of power cannot be taken from you, because it does not depend on conditions. Control says, I will be calm when everything goes my way. Mastery says, I will remain calm even when it doesn't. Control needs cooperation from the world. Power needs discipline from the self. If your peace depends on control, your peace is temporary, because the world will always present something unpredictable. Someone will misunderstand you. Something will delay. A plan will change. And if your stability is built on controlling those variables, you will always feel one disruption away from chaos. But when your stability is internal, when your power is rooted in emotional regulation, you become unshakable, not because life stops moving, but because you stop being moved by every shift. And that is where real strength begins, not in gripping reality, but in grounding yourself within it. Now, let's talk about a word that many misunderstand: surrender. Surrender is often mistaken for weakness, for giving up, for passivity. But that is not what I mean. Surrender, in the esoteric sense, is strategic trust. It's knowing when to hold and when to release. It's acting with clarity, not gripping out of fear. When you surrender, you still show up. You still prepare. You still do what needs to be done. But you stop obsessing over the outcome. You don't panic if life doesn't go according to your plan. You guide what you can influence, and you release what you cannot. Think of a skilled surfer. They do not try to control the ocean. They do not grab every wave and force it to behave. They observe. They anticipate. They move in harmony with the currents. They let the wave support them instead of fighting it. That is surrender. Not weakness, not inaction, but alignment. Alignment with life's natural flow. Alignment with forces larger than your ego. Because the moment you release obsession, you allow energy to move. You stop pushing against life. You stop draining your own power. You stop trying to micromanage the universe and start moving with it. And paradoxically, that is when influence and impact become stronger. When you surrender correctly, your actions become more precise, more potent, and more effective. Because they are no longer clouded by tension, fear, or desperation. Remember this line. Surrender aligns you with forces larger than your ego. It is not giving up control in the world. It is giving up the illusion of control within yourself. And that distinction is the gateway to real power. Now, let's explore what real power actually looks like in daily life. It's subtle. It doesn't announce itself with force or drama. It is calm authority. You notice it in the way a person responds, rather than reacts. When someone challenges them, they pause before speaking. When chaos unfolds, they do not panic. When opportunities or recognition appear, they don't chase validation. They don't force connections. They don't manipulate outcomes to prove a point or secure safety. Instead, they operate from presence, from clarity, from a grounded sense of self that is not dependent on external circumstances. Energy shifts from, "I must make this happen," to, "I will show up fully and let life respond." They still act, they still engage, but they do not try to bend reality to their will. They do not tighten their grip on outcomes. They understand the difference between influence and control. Influence comes from alignment. Control comes from fear. This is why real power feels effortless, because it is not manufactured. It does not rely on struggle, tension, or resistance. It does not need to dominate or push. Instead, it emerges naturally from inner stability. And here is the key phrase to remember. Real power is inner stability. It is the calm in the storm, the clarity when everyone else is panicking, the presence that can respond rather than react. When you cultivate this, life stops feeling like a battle. Your energy stops leaking into struggle. You move with flow instead of fighting against it. And in this state, real outcomes manifest more effortlessly than ever before. One of the most misunderstood aspects of life. The ego thinks, if I plan it perfectly, it will happen perfectly. So it forces schedules, deadlines, and outcomes. But here is the esoteric truth. Forcing timing often creates fragile results. Things may appear to work temporarily, but they lack resilience. They collapse under pressure because they were rushed, not naturally matured. Delays are not punishment. Delays are refinement. They are opportunities for preparation, for growth, for alignment. Sometimes redirection occurs. A door closes, a path shifts, a relationship delays, or a plan changes. Not to frustrate you, but to protect you. What if what you're trying to control is not ready yet, including you? What if the universe is aligning circumstances, people, and energy before you even notice? When we resist this rhythm, impatience arises. Impatience is subtle distrust. It whispers, something is wrong, I am missing out, I am not safe. But it is not reality. It is the ego projecting fear onto the timeline of life. When you accept divine timing, you allow life to unfold naturally. You allow your preparation to meet opportunity. You allow alignment to replace forcing. And you stop confusing speed with progress. You begin to understand that life moves when it is ready. And your role is not to control it, but to position yourself in alignment, readiness, and clarity. Patience becomes a tool. Trust becomes a shield. And from this space, outcomes arrive effortlessly, naturally, and powerfully. Key line to remember: impatience is subtle distrust. Now the question becomes practical. How do you actually live this way? How do you function in the real world, with responsibilities, deadlines, relationships, ambitions, without falling back into control? The answer is not abandoning structure. It is relaxing your grip on outcomes while strengthening discipline within yourself. This is what I call relaxed control. Not controlling life, but controlling your character. It begins with awareness. The next time you feel tension in your body, pause. Notice your shoulders, notice your jaw, notice your breathing. Tension is often the first signal that you are trying to control something outside your authority. Then ask yourself a simple but powerful question. What am I trying to control right now? Is it someone's opinion? Is it how fast something is happening? Is it how you are being perceived? Is it an outcome that hasn't even unfolded yet? Once you identify it, separate effort from attachment. Effort is healthy. Attachment is draining. You can prepare for a meeting without obsessing over how everyone will respond. You can apply for an opportunity without tying your worth to the result. You can love someone deeply without trying to control their every emotion. Replace urgency with grounded action. Instead of saying, "This must happen now," shift to, I will take the next aligned step. One step, not 10, just the next one. Grounded, intentional, calm. Affirm this within yourself. I control my character, not outcomes. You control your discipline. You control your honesty. You control your preparation. You control your emotional regulation. You do not control timing. You do not control perception. You do not control every external variable. And when you truly internalize that distinction, something powerful happens. Your energy stops leaking. Your mind becomes clearer. Your actions become sharper. Because you are no longer scattered across variables you cannot command. You are centered in the one domain that belongs to you, your inner world. And from that centered state, influence becomes natural. Not forced, not strained, but aligned. This is relaxed control. This is disciplined surrender. This is real power embodied. At the beginning, you believed control meant safety. You believed if you planned enough, managed enough, anticipated enough, you could prevent pain. But along the way, you discovered something deeper. Control tightens, flow opens, force exhausts, alignment empowers. You saw that the more tightly you gripped life, the more anxious you became. The more you tried to control people, the more resistance you created. The more you forced timing, the more fragile the outcome felt. And then the shift happened. You realized real power is not dominance over circumstances. It is steadiness within them. It is the ability to pause when triggered, to breathe when uncertain, to act without panic, to prepare without obsession, to love without gripping. The ego wants certainty, but the soul wants alignment. The ego wants control, but wisdom chooses trust. Think about it. The ocean does not need your permission to move. The seasons do not rush themselves. The sun does not panic about tomorrow. Nature flows, and you are part of that same intelligence. When you surrender, you do not lose power, you reclaim it. Because surrender removes fear from action. You still show up, you still work, you still build, you still lead. But now you do it from stability, from grounded confidence, from inner authority. And that kind of energy is unshakable. So the next time life feels uncertain, the next time timing feels delayed, the next time you feel the urge to grip tightly, pause. Loosen your fist, open your hand, trust the flow. Remember, control blocks alignment. Impatience is subtle distrust. Real power is inner stability. And life responds best to those who move with it, not against it.